Well, we did hear that a lot of times.
Yes, we did.
I actually asked a research assistant of mine to count how many times we heard that in the New York Times in that first year from February 2022 to February 2023 in their opinion columns. It was 26 times unprovoked. Of course, things aren't unprovoked.
It's almost
way.
a brand name, the unprovoked invasion.
It's the lazy person's dodge for actually trying to think through what's going on.
Yes.
And it's very dangerous because it's wrong. It gets the whole story completely wrong. And it misunderstands the trap that we set for ourselves as the United States to push Ukraine deeper and deeper and deeper into this hopeless mess that they're in right now.
So in what sense was it provoked? Like, what started this?
Basically, it started very simply, which is that the United States government, let's not call it the U.S. people, they had nothing to do with this, but the U.S. government said, we're going to put Ukraine on our side, and we're going to go right up to that 2,100 kilometer border with Russia. We're going to put our troops and NATO and maybe missiles, whatever we want, because we are the sole superpower of the world, and we do what we want. And it goes back actually a long way. It goes back 170 years. The Brits had this idea first, surround Russia in the Black Sea region, and Russia's not a great power anymore. And that was Lord Palmerston's idea in the Crimean War, 1853 to 1856. And the Brits taught us what we know about empire. And they basically taught us the idea, Russia, it needs an outlet. It needs an outlet to the Middle East. It needs an outlet to the Mediterranean. You surround Russia in the Black Sea. You have rendered Russia a second or third rate country. And Zbig Brzezinski, one of our lead geostrategists of the current era, wrote in 1997, let's do this. Let's make sure that we basically surround Russia in the Black Sea region. They got this idea that we'll expand NATO so that every country in the Black Sea around Russia is a NATO country. Right now, back then, Turkey was a NATO country. But we said, okay, we'll get Romania and Bulgaria, and we'll get Ukraine, and we'll get Georgia. Now, Georgia, not our Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia of the Black Sea.
We used to call it Soviet Georgia.
Yes, Soviet Georgia, if you want to call it that.
Home of Stalin.
It's not NATO North Atlantic. It's way out there on the eastern edge of the Black Sea region. People can look at a map. But we said, yeah, we'll make Georgia part of NATO too. And the reason was very clear, and Zbig was very explicit about it, that this is our way to basically dominate Eurasia. If we can dominate the Black Sea region, then Russia's nothing. If we make Russia nothing, then we can basically control Eurasia, meaning all the way from Europe to Central Asia, and through our influence in East Asia, do the same thing. And that's American unipolarity. We run the world. We are the hegemon. We are the sole superpower. We are unchallenged. So that's the idea.
But why would you want that? Why would the Brits want that? Why does the U.S. State Department want that? What about Russia, which is not actually much of an expansionist power, is so threatening? Like
it's not about Russia. It's about the U.S. It's about Britain before that. I think it's a little bit like that old game of Risk. I don't know if you played that as a kid, but the idea was have your piece on every place in the world. That was the game. And you read the American strategists, whether it's Zbig Brzezinski, although he was very moderate, or the neocons who have run U.S. foreign policy for the last 30 years. The neocons are very explicit. The U.S. must be the unchallenged superpower in every place in the world, in every region. We must dominate. It's quite a load for us American people. What they say is we are going to be the constabulary duty holder. What fancy word for saying we'll be the world's policeman. They say it explicitly. They say that's lots of wars. We have to be ready for all these wars. To my mind, it's a little crazy. But their idea was, after the end of the Soviet Union, well, now we run the world. And to come back to Russia, the idea was, well, Russia's weak, it's down, we're the sole superpower, they're on their back or on their knees, whatever it is. And now we can move NATO where we want, and we can surround them. And the Russians said, please don't do that. Don't bring your troops, your weapons, your missiles right up to our border. It's not a good idea. And the U.S., I was around in those years, involved in Russia and in Central Europe. The U.S. was, we don't hear you. We don't hear you. We do what we want. They kept pushing. Inside the U.S. government in the 1990s, when this debate was going, should NATO expand? Some people said, yeah, but we told Gorbachev and we told Yeltsin we weren't going to expand at all. No, come on, the Soviet Union's done. We can do what we want. We're the sole superpower. Clinton bought into that. That was Madeleine Albright's line. NATO enlargement started. And our most sophisticated diplomats, we used to have diplomats at the time, we don't have them anymore, but we used to have diplomats like George Kennan, said this is the greatest mistake we could possibly make. We had a defense secretary, Bill Perry, who was Clinton's defense secretary, who agonized, God, I should resign over this. This is terrible. What's going on? But he was outmaneuvered diplomatically by Richard Holbrooke and by Madeleine Albright, and Clinton never thought through anything systematically, in my opinion. And so they decided, okay, Hungary, Poland, Czech Republic, first round. And then Brzezinski, in a 1997 article in Foreign Affairs magazine, which is kind of the bellwether of foreign policy, wrote a strategy for Eurasia where he laid out exactly the timeline for this U.S. expansion of power. And he said, late 1990s, we'll take in Central Europe, Hungary, Poland, Czech Republic. By the early 2000s, we'll take in the Baltic states. Now that's getting close to Russia. By 2005 to 2010, we'll invite Ukraine to become part of NATO. So this wasn't some flippant thing. This was a long-term plan, and it was based on a long-term geostrategy. Now the Russians are saying, are you kidding? We wanted peace. We ended the Cold War too. You didn't just defeat us. We said no more. We disbanded the Warsaw Pact. We wanted peace. We wanted cooperation. You call it victory. We just wanted to cooperate. I know that for a fact because I was there in those years. What Gorbachev wanted, what Yeltsin wanted. They didn't want war with the United States, nor were they saying we're defeated. They were saying we just want to cooperate. We want to stop the Cold War. We want to become part of a world economy. We want to be a normal economy. We want to be normal society, connected with you, connected with Europe, connected with Asia. And the U.S. said, we get it, we won. You do everything we say, and we determine how the pieces are going to go. So in the early 2000s, Putin comes in. First business for Putin was good cooperation with Europe.
Yes.
You go back to the early 2000s. Again, I know the people. I watched closely. I was a participant in some of it. Putin was completely pro-Europe.
Yes.
And pro-U.S., by the way.
I know.
And we don't want to talk about this. We don't want to admit it because we don't want anything other than unprovoked. So everything is phony, what we say. Everything is a lie. But just to say, the U.S. kept doing unilateral things that were really outrageous. In 1999, we bombed Belgrade for 78 days. Bad move. Absolutely. We bombed a capital of Europe for 78 days.
Looking back, what was the point of that?
The point of that was to break Serbia in two, create a new state, Kosovo, where we have the largest NATO military base in Southeast Europe. We put Bondesteel base there because we wanted a base in Southeastern Europe. And again, you look at the neocons. It's nice of them. They actually describe all of this in various documents. You have to make the links, but in a document called Rebuilding America's Defenses in the year 2000, they say the Balkans is a new strategic area for the U.S., so we have to move large troops to the Balkans, because their idea is literally the game of Risk. Not just you need good relations or peace. We need our pieces on the board. We need military bases with the advanced positioning of our military everywhere in the world. So they wanted a big base in southeastern Europe. They didn't like Serbia. Serbia was close to Russia. Anyway, we're the sole superpower. We do what we want. So they divided the country, which they now claim you never do. And, you never change borders. We broke apart Serbia, established by our declaration a new country, Kosovo. We put a huge NATO base there, and that was the goal. So that was 1999.
So it wasn't to save the oppressed Muslim population?
Excuse me?
It wasn't to save the oppressed Muslim population?
It was very, very much to save the military-industrial complex to have a nice location in southeastern Europe.
We killed all those people, wrecked the city.
It was a little bit sad, but we do lots of sad things and lots of destructive things, lots of wars. We're the country of perpetual war. We don't look back. We're not even supposed to talk about this because this was unprovoked, remember? So in 2002, the U.S. unilaterally pulled out of the anti-ballistic missile treaty. Unilaterally. Well, that was one of the stabilizers of the relationship with Russia, and it was one of the stabilizers of the global nuclear situation, which is absolutely dangerous. And the U.S. unilaterally started putting Aegis missiles into first Poland, then Romania. And the Russians are saying, wait a minute, what do we know you're putting in this? You're a few minutes from Moscow. This is completely destabilizing. Do you think you might want to talk to us? So then comes 2004, 7 more countries in NATO: Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Romania, Bulgaria, Slovakia, and Slovenia. Now, filling in the Black Sea, Romania and Bulgaria. Suddenly, they're now North Atlantic countries, but it's all part of this design, all spelled out, all quite explicit. We're surrounding Russia. In 2007, President Putin gave a very clear speech at the Munich Security Conference. Very powerful, very correct, very frustrated, where he said, gentlemen, you told us in 1990 NATO would never enlarge. That was the promise made to President Gorbachev, and it was the promise made to President Yeltsin. And you cheated. And you repeatedly cheated. And you don't even admit that you said this, but it's all plainly documented, by the way, and as you know, in 1,000 archival sites, so it's easy to verify all of this. James Baker III, our Secretary of State, said that NATO would not move 1 inch eastward. And it wasn't a flippant statement. It was a statement repeated and repeated and repeated. Hans-Dietrich Genscher, the foreign minister of Germany, same story. The Germans wanted reunification. Gorbachev said, we'll support that, but we don't want that to come at our expense. No, it won't come at your expense. NATO won't move 1 inch eastward, Mr. President. Repeated so many times in many documents, many statements by the NATO Secretary General, by the U.S. Secretary of State, by the German Chancellor. Now, of course, all denied by our foreign policy blob, because we're not supposed to remember anything. Remember, this was all unprovoked. So back to 2007, Putin gives this speech and he says, stop. Don't even think about Ukraine. This is our 2,100 kilometer border. This is absolutely part of the integrated economy of this region. Don't even think about it. Now, I know from insiders, from all the diplomatic work that I do, that Europe was saying to the U.S., European leaders, don't think about Ukraine, please. This is not a good idea. Just stop. We know from our current CIA director, Bill Burns, that he wrote a very eloquent, impassioned, articulate, clear, secret, as usual, memo, which we only got to see because WikiLeaks showed to the American people what maybe we would like to know once in a while, but we're never told.
Like what our government's doing.
What they're doing and how they're putting us at nuclear risk and other things. Okay, this one did get out. And it's called Niet means Niet, no means no. And what Bill Burns very perceptively, articulately conveys to Condoleezza Rice and back to the White House in 2008 is Ukraine is really a red line. Don't do it. It's not just Putin. It's not just Putin's government. It's the entire political class of Russia. And just to help all of us as we think about it, it is exactly as if Mexico said, we think it would be great to have Chinese military bases on the Rio Grande. We can't see why the U.S. would have any problem with that. Of course, we would go completely insane. And
we should.
And we should, of course. The whole idea is so absurdly dangerous and reckless that you can't even imagine grown-ups doing this. So what happens is, for what I'm told by European leaders and by long, detailed discussion, Bush Jr. says to them, no, it's okay. Don't worry, I hear you about Ukraine. And then he goes off for the Christmas holidays and comes back, whether it's Cheney, whether it's Bush, whatever it is, says, NATO's going to enlarge to Ukraine. And the Europeans are shocked, pissed. What are you doing?